Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Scotland's Future series podcast. And this week we've got a really interesting subject that we'll all have to tackle to look at today. And we're thinking about how do people from different backgrounds work together. And I'm really lucky to be joined by colleagues from the University Students Association, and I've got Barry Wilt, Association President, Caitlin Ridgway, who's the Director of Wellbeing and Equality, and Cam Brown, the Director of Education. So thanks for coming along, guys, and participating.
Happy to be here.
So we're going to talk a little bit about how people from different backgrounds work together, but actually I'm really interested about the work of the Students Association and what you do as well. So just to give us an idea, Barry, I'll start with you. Can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, but also about the job that you're doing at the moment for people that might not know that much about the Students Association?
Yeah, of course. So Barry, I'm the Association President over at the Union on Market Street. I feel I've been in the job for a few months now. The more that I learn about what the Students Association does, the more I'm continually impressed by the scope of the services that we provide for students. I kind of see it in a few different ways. It's advocacy, it's us advocating to the university, it's the events and things that we put on, but the services that we provide as well, the support and things. And so yeah, the Students Association, we're doing a lot. It's obviously one of the most difficult times to be a student. The year that we've come in, students are facing enormous pressures across so many different things. And it's in that way it's more important than ever that we do it right, but we seem to be doing a good job so far.
No, but you're right, because you've got students who've just come out of a pandemic as well, which would have been really disruptive in terms of their education and home experience. Can you just tell me, before I move on to your colleague, just tell us a little bit about your own background for people that don't know?
I'm actually, so St Andrews is such a global university, but I'm actually quite local then, I guess, in that regard. I grew up in Dundee and I lived there for most of my life. I went to Craigie High School, which I know you're a local man as well, you maybe heard of. It's not always got the best reputation, but I definitely came from an area that I noticed the stark difference in St Andrews is quite different to here. And I think that's what drives all the work that I do. But yeah, so local, grew up, in poverty, really got to see the raw side of inequality and things in the UK. And then find myself here as Association President. Good.
Well, thanks for coming along today. And and you're right, it's good to have that perspective, because St Andrews and Dundee, I think, if folk don't always realise just how close they are, as well, geographically at least. Yeah. So, Cam, tell us a little bit about yourself and about some of the work that you're doing at the Union.
My work centres all around education and advocating for people's needs and wants and improvements to our academic representation system, as well as our academics as a whole. So I lead the academic rep system, which is made up of 30 school presidents and language conveners, as well as over 400 different class reps from undergrad, postgrad and postgrad research as well. So whole range of issues that go on there. And it's bringing those to the attention of the university and making those improvements where we needed to, so negotiating where we go through. So big projects at the moment, obviously the academic calendar, consultation, and a whole array of things to do with that as well. So it's a really important time to be listening to students and making sure their voices are heard.
Good, and it'll be good to talk a little bit more about that and get into some of the work that you're doing and why students should be interested. But before I do that, Caitlin, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a wee bit about the job you do and your background as well?
Yes, so I'm the Director of Wellbeing and Equality, as you introduced me as earlier. So I'm kind of the lead in the Sabbs on equality, diversity and inclusion issues. So I work with all of the equalities officers on the SRCs, like the LGBT plus officer, the BAME officer, gender equality, widening access, etc. with Barry as well. And work on sort of making sure all of our events and initiatives are as inclusive to all of our students as possible, and look at where there may be our gaps in representation. And then I'm also probably one of the main contacts with student services at the Student Association, and looking at mental health and wellbeing support and academic adjustments. And sometimes I do work with that with Cam, overlapping and stuff like that.
Good. So let me ask Caitlin, I'm going to get into the guts of you working together, but I just want to know a wee bit more about the Union. If there are students listening to this who might not know that much about the services that you provide, the work that's done, as Barry said at the start, some of the great work that's been done by people, why should the students who are listening sort of care about some of the work that you do?
Well, I think, guess the students are really at the heart of the Students' Association. Everything we do is like for students and involves student input. So in terms of support we provide, we do have our Help Hub service, which is led by our lead advocate at the university, Ian Couples, which offers sort of academic support or also like support with like complaints cases and any kind of difficulties on that side that students may be going through. But also if in sort of other situations where maybe you're not going through like a formal process, just our subcommittees and the events we put on provide sort of a safe space and a welcoming space for students like from all different backgrounds. So like, yeah, all that different subcommittees.
Right on Market Street. And tell us a little bit about your background.
My background. My family are from Stoke-on-Trent originally, and then I moved down south, and all of the people in Bournemouth, where I moved to, thought I was, all like northern, and then all my family now think I'm really posh. So that's worked out well for me. And then my family, they're not like a super traditional like higher education family. My dad did a degree as a mature student when I was little in like a vocational course, but my mum didn't go to uni. Then I went to state grammar school, and then I looked at like the rankings for the course I wanted to do, and I liked the beach, so I was like, I'll apply here, and here I am.
Why not? Why not? It's a good place to be. Thanks, Caitlin. Cam, tell us a bit about your background.
So my background's a bit of a more complex one. So I was born in Aberdeen, moved to Yorkshire at quite a very young age, moved around the world quite a lot with Dad's work as he moved around. He left school with not many educational qualifications, and then went into the military, and then went into industry, and when he's worked his way up from the bottom, right the way, hopefully getting up towards the top, and he's putting a lot of personal demands on that. So he's the son of a coal miner, and I'm the son of him as a veteran and a sort of working his way up through industry. We don't have a huge amount of education in the background. His sister did go to university, but he didn't, and his parents didn't either. So it's been a real learning curve coming into university and trying to navigate that way forward. It's an incredibly important time to be doing that and sort of learning on the feet about it as well.
Brilliant, thank you. So let me touch upon your experiences at university. What, because you're all obviously at university before you took on your current roles. And I'll start with, going back to you, Barry. What do you think you bring? What does that experience, having been at university, bring to you when you're doing this job, and your background before that as well?
I think for me, so one of the jobs as president, like both of you very eloquently like articulated what remits and stuff you work in, whereas mine is a bit more vague, and that is kind of the catch-all net. It's overseeing a lot of different things. But I think the experience that I found has really informed a lot of the work I'm doing, and has been picked up quite well by the university, is I saw what it was like to come to university and, as many of our students do, have really no financial support from back home, and very little, like you mentioned, your mum and dad didn't come from an academic family. I think that lack of support as well is really leaves you, when your parents don't know what an essay looks like, and they don't know what a report looks like, and you can't speak to them to get that advice. You're kind of by yourself in this whole environment where sometimes it feels like a lot of your friends are supported. That experience has really sort of driven the work that I try to do, and making sure that we have a community in St Andrews, the university support and peer support and everything. It feels like if you don't have help outside of town, that that you feel supported in our community. That's something that hopefully we can try and build, and my experience definitely has informed.
And so let me ask Caitlin, you're Director of Wellbeing and Equality. Do you think that's something that the union is able to do to plug that gap that Barry identified there?
I think so, because I think a part of particularly the offices and stuff that I work with, it is sort of like recognising where maybe there are gaps in support, or perhaps certain students like coming in and maybe not feeling like they fit in as much. So like it is very much like about providing those safe spaces. So like with we have like our widening access and participation officer that advocates for students maybe that aren't from like traditional like higher education backgrounds, or that are like most represented at universities, and the other offices and stuff too that represent like those kind of underrepresented experiences, and kind of making sure that the initiatives that we all put on together like have like feedback from everyone, and also that there is just even just sort of like events maybe or academic families often too, like people want to look for perhaps parents that maybe they can relate to from their own experience, and they often will do like family finding events within those committees, and people can find people they relate to, I guess.
Good. And so, Cammy, we talked about that. That's some really good background. So, what role do you feel the Students' Union plays in students who might be looking for a wee bit of help? Where do you see the union bringing a bit of value into the student experience?
So the union's really good at advocating for that extra support that students need at all levels across the university.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily just in terms of looking over essays or looking at what other support, which is really important, and that we work with departments in the university such as SEED who are really vital in delivering that. We're also able to advocate for the necessary extenuating sort of circumstances that people might rely on throughout their whole university career on that sort of thing. So looking at the extensions policy, our academic alert system, making sure that people feel supported and not necessarily cast out or isolated from the university community in that way. If they feel like they need that extra support, that those measures are there and in place and students feel supported. Okay. And a big part of the work we're looking at is our sort of retention and reintegration program for when people leave on a leave of absence, making people sure when they leave and come back.
So people leave and then come back. And what kind of stuff are you doing if people leave and come back? So for anybody who might be a little bit out the system and thinking about coming in.
It's making sure they feel supported during that journey out. Obviously people take a leave of absence for a whole array of reasons, and usually they're very difficult and they need that support while they're not a student, but we still owe that sort of duty of care because they are going to come back and we want them to come back and feel supported by our community.
Okay.
And it's about making sure they feel that through the whole time and then making that process of shifting back into university as smooth as possible. You take time off from writing essays, you take time off from being in the system, and it's about making sure you are able to come back and not just dropped in, and having those sort of measures in place and assistance in place to help with that as well.
Okay. So a really important job, a really important part of the student experience that you've all set out. So let's get to the nitty gritty. What's it like? So you've all come in, your sabbaticals, you're sort of thrown together a wee bit, because it's an election and who knows, it's not like other recruitment processes. What's it like to work with each other? I'm going to think about who I'm going to pick on next. Right, Caitlin, you tell us. What are they like to work with?
Well, I think at the start we did do quite a lot of kind of getting to know each other activities. We had like a little Sabb retreat where we all got to kind of, I suppose, get to know each other a bit better. I think, like you said, you don't necessarily know how it's going to go with positions, particularly contested roles. And some people, like I did actually know Barry from the start of uni, so we had met before, but I hadn't met Cam before, coming in as like postgrad. But I think, honestly, like you are kind of united by the experience of student representation in that sense. So like it is quite a unique position to be in. It's quite like a weird job if you try and explain it to anyone that's outside the student union.
So it's quite a unique job. Do you think that helps forge the team a little bit?
Yeah, I think so, because there are sort of issues that maybe other people couldn't relate to as much, but you can always sort of talk it over. I think whenever we're having kind of issues, even if it's in our remits that we're not like necessarily working together on, we can always go to each other for advice and kind of be like, I know how you feel, and like help each other out like ahead of meetings, that kind of thing. So I think we do pretty good. And like where we have done like different things at uni or had maybe been from like different circles in uni and come together, all our like different experiences really help us, I think, with that representation.
And just given the things, Cam, that you've identified about, people from different backgrounds, how does that help you in terms of informing your job? You talked about advocacy, you talked about the different services, and we've got quite a wide student body as well, people from lots of different backgrounds that you're representing.
I mean, my background is different from others, and it's one that has been, as I say, quite complex from different economic backgrounds, and our family's been through the ups and downs. I've also lived across the world, so we lived in Singapore for 6 years at one point. His dad worked down there with me with his work. And it's sort of learning, adapting that sort of what we learn from other places and bringing it here and seeing what works and having that outside perspective. I think one thing that's different from Barry and Caitlin is I've been to a different university as well. So where things have been completely different. And seeing what their sort of support is. The university I was at before wasn't in the top ranks of the league tables. And there was a real melting pot of people from all different backgrounds, similar to here, but not as extreme as it is here. And it's seeing how those people interact and how we interact as a community, and then trying to emulate what worked there and emulating it here. As you say, it's working with different backgrounds that really do actually bring us together, not necessarily divide us apart. And we all have this common interest of wanting to do well and excel and support one another. And the sort of tight community we have here in St Andrews, being on the northeast of Fife, it's a destination. It's not something you transit through. You have to come to St Andrews. Really does bring that community together in terms of academics.
So that's a really interesting point, bringing people together. And Barry, you're from just across the water in Dundee, Craigie High School. you're president, in a job that you said quite rightly that you've got to form. It's slightly less defined than the other jobs. How do you find the team, your colleagues that you work with? How does that help you in your work, and how does that diversity help you in your day-to-day work as well?
I think it's really useful for me. I don't think there's one single student experience that is more valid or more important than another. But I am aware that when I grew up around everyone who had very similar experiences to me. And the conversations that we have with the university around things like inequality or students who have grown up with more difficult experiences. Because that was most of what I knew from all my friends. It does need to be much more holistic thing. I've learned a lot from this team of, if we were talking about student welfare, for example, it doesn't matter how much money you had growing up. What's important is how that student has responded to that environment, how that student needs support as we move on in all different ways. And we do represent a team with like very different experiences growing up, but we all have learned a lot from each other in terms of that holistic student experience of how do we make sure that every single person in our community is supported. And so it's been really useful. I think because we come from the same idea, like someone who's coming to work for the university in IT is probably coming because they like IT, not because it's the University of St Andrews. And so the community building between them and someone who maybe works in the States is very different to us. We've come in with very different experiences. We've all applied for very different roles that cover a whole different aspects, but we've all come in because we want to represent students. And there's like that common thread throughout all of it that it means, it's been really easy to all work together and listen to each other and learn from each other.
I think on that point, I don't think our differences or our diversity is a weakness, it's our strength. Ensuring that we are able to represent everyone and everything on all levels, not just necessarily on different backgrounds, but on different thoughts, different aspects and approaches to how we look at an issue and how we might see the impact of that on different aspects of the student community as well. It's a real strength, it's not a weakness at all.
Has that been your experience, Caitlin?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think particularly as well, I'd say like with my role, because of course this is like director of Wellbeing and Equality, but there's like so many different experiences, like one person can't possibly know everybody's experience. So I think a lot of my role is kind of listening and learning, obviously using my own experience, but kind of making sure that I'm listening to different people. And I think having kind of our differences and different experiences with like university and like life before university is really like valuable, I think, in informing like how I approach tasks and sort of like what other things I might want to consider that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of just like myself.
Okay, well let me put you on the spot then. So you've talked about the diversity amongst yourselves, but also amongst the broader student body that you represent, and you work hard to try and serve to the best of your ability. So what kind of stuff have you learned? What has helped make you better at your job, or maybe make you think about things in a slightly different way? Can you think about anything? And how's that helped you? So it'd be nice to hear some examples that you might have.
Someone want to shoot?
Who wants to shoot?
Oh goodness, I'm gonna have to give me a minute to think about
it. We can edit out awkward silences.
We
can also keep them in. I mean, thinking about the university is intensely international. Students from all over the world, which is great. Staff members all over the world in professional and academic services. And so how's that, but also from a wide range of backgrounds, how do you feel that's helped?
One project that has really brought all of that together for me is the academic calendar one.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about that, because that's quite, and it affects everybody.
It affects everyone.
Everyone, yeah.
So in 2021, the university adopted a new calendar for semester 2.
Yeah.
And they did some consultation then, but over the last couple of years, we've seen a level of dissatisfaction with how it's panning out. So the university committed to reviewing it.
Yeah.
And over the last, from starting in April, so just before I took office, and then it was really at the start of my term, we decided we were going to do a full consultation on what that would look like, and that was conducted over September. So worked with a great comms team in the university, our own one, did a whole range of ways of engaging with people on that. But what we wanted to do was make sure that everyone was represented, not just students, not just undergrads, but our postgrads, our postgrad researchers, our professional services at the university, and our academic staff as well, making sure everyone had their say in it, because as you say, it affects everyone, and it affects everyone in different ways. So when you're looking at it from a student perspective, not necessarily looking at when can you take a holiday or get a break, you're looking at when whole contracts start and end, because that'll have an impact on their finances and whether they can actually afford to come to university as well, because if you're paying for extra weeks of halls that you can't use, or if you extend the term time, that extends the halls on your periods that you're here, where if you shorten it, you get less teaching time, which means you might not get the educational support that you need in that condensed time period. And that's a real balancing act, and we were really keen to make sure we got those views involved. And especially from a professional services side, where we're not looking at not just our IT services or our comms team or anything that's going on, we're looking at people from the estates team to our catering teams as well, who rely on the university for their income, and making sure that their work is not affected by that as well, because there's all these moving parts, and make sure that you're having on it. I mean, one issue that really did come up, is going to come up again over time, is you talked about our international community, and Christmas break as well is a big one. So
yes, yeah.
At the moment, our exam diet,
with people trying to get home.
Our exam diet ends on the 23rd of December.
Yeah.
And people can't get flights home, and we're increasing our international student population. That will have a direct impact on the students, where they can actually go home and spend it with their families and get the break that they need from academics to see there and sort of have a reset. So it has been a huge project, and I'd like to say we very successfully managed to pull that all together, and we've managed to pull a proposal that will hopefully work for everyone.
Okay.
But it was a real learning curve, and making sure that we did have everyone, not just the most vocal people, but making sure everyday people got there.
So drawing on the breadth of the experience, sorry, Barry, please.
I would say a very recent experience that we've all learned from each other on is the conflict in the Middle East, and how we as a Students' Association respond to that. And learning, it's been such a learning process for all of us, because we're by no means experts in conflict, or experts on the situation, or indeed with being representatives of our members, experts on how students will respond to this and how it'll impact them and how they react to it. And we've put out joint statements with the university and things, and we've considered these things, but that for me has been a massive learning curve, that we've all really relied on each other, and people come to this conflict with different points of view. In terms of even student support, there's different points of view there, of how we represent those communities on issues like this. And it's been massively helpful, like to have 6 different officers with kind of 6 different views, 6 different important inputs, for us to be able to represent. So
I think that's fair, Caitlin. We're trying to pull it together. Yeah,
absolutely. I think I do really value as well that we have got all of the team to talk over when something big like that comes up that does sort of filter into all of our roommates, that we can all just sort of sit and pause and talk about things, and the learning process, kind of like you said, I think is valuable in working out how best we can cover in our different roommates, supporting everybody.
Yeah, just the one quick point on that. For example, to take that issue. So we have Cam, who, from an academic point of view, needs to understand how does our response to it impact the academics of students who might be impacted by the conflict. There's myself, who does the public relations side of it, of how do we advocate as an organisation outside of it. Yourself, Caitlin, of Wellbeing, and how with student services and wider debates around that, of how students are reacting. It's so many of these issues are so intersectional that we all constantly rely on one another. I'm no expert on wellbeing, but whenever I need assistance, Caitlin's right next to me in the office. So we're constantly learning and growing together.
So that's a really interesting example. That there's a current issue. You've got devastating conflict in the Middle East, and we've had a series of them, such as the impact of Russia's war in Ukraine, etc. That has a big impact, and then it's how you come together as a team on that, and then academic calendar as well. I thought that was a really interesting example. Just to wrap up this conversation. I mean, you've been in post how long now?
Since July.
This wasn't meant to be the harder question.
Don't believe me. I have no concept of time whatsoever anymore.
4 months, 5 months.
Okay. So you're touching upon, you're getting towards a sort of halfway point, so still a lot to come up. what are some of the lessons that you've taken from, if you had to reflect on some of the lessons from working together that you've taken out of that?
I think one of the major lessons, and I think speaking candidly, is that disagreement is okay. If we all have the same opinion, it'd be boring.
Yeah.
And we all have our ups and downs, we all have good days, we have bad days, but relying on each other as a team is so important. The people that we work with, so not just ourselves as the three here, but our other three officers, so the AU Pres, the DOES, the Right Defence Services and the DOSDA, we all really support each other, and we are an incredibly close team. We have our ups and downs, we have our disagreements, but we all come together because we all, as Farry said, we're united in representing students and moving forward together as a team. It's something that is really learning about that.
Yeah.
Disagreements may come up. We're all from, as you say, we're all from different backgrounds, we're all from different ideas, all different thoughts. And it's not being scared of that, it's embracing that and just realising that as people we all come to rely on each other and are a really important part of our lives.
Yeah.
So.
Caitlin?
Yeah. I think, absolutely, that we can all sort of discuss things and help each other out. I think as well, often when I think you're in a representative position, when you hear if something comes up or happens, you feel very I need to react immediately because I'm a representative, I've got this responsibility to the students. But I think sort of being able to actually, it's okay to stop and pause, and you can ask for help, you can talk about things, and then often respond maybe in a better, more comprehensive way because of that. So I think I've really valued when I've been able to kind of actually be okay, calm down, because I think especially with the kind of well-being side and things, you can get in a bit all these students are relying on you kind of attitude, but being able to sort of okay, I'll pause, I can ask for some advice if it's something that I know that they've worked on, or it's other students that
really
you're working with.
Yeah, so take a breath so you can respond more effectively. Barry?
I'd say the disagreements thing is a big one. We need to.
Yeah.
You've got a background in politics, Stephen. You know what it's like. And being a representative is a really personally demanding job. It takes a lot out of you. And if you can't rely on those that are closest to you, if you can't manage disagreements in a way that's healthy, that it doesn't impact those personal relationships, we spend more time with each other than we do with anyone else. I see you more than I see my flatmates. And it's important then, the two sides of the disagreements. One important for us, but important for the students.
Yeah.
That the people that we represent, that when we do disagree on things, we can collectively, come together to resolve that. I think that's been one of our greatest, having known, for years and years, across different unions, sabbatical officers struggle with this, but it's something that I think we've grappled pretty well. Something that I'm quite proud of us for. Yeah. It's really that's a really important one for me.
That's really important. Guys, thanks so much for sharing that. Thanks for the work that you do. It's really important work that you do. It's okay to disagree. Really important. It's okay to take a breath before you make a big decision that will impact on folk as well. Thanks to everybody for listening. Just below this, if you have a look, we'll stick up the link to the Students' Association. So if you want to learn more about the work that these guys and all of their colleagues do, please have a look. And if you need the services that are provided, please, it's a great resource. So please pop into the union if you're one of the few who's not already done so. Thank you. Thanks for listening.